Hello, I'm Danielle Cumming, Artistic Director of Marlowe Guitar International, a concert series and education outreach presenter based in Montgomery County, Maryland. For almost 30 years, our organization has worked to fulfill our mission of building community through music. We were honored for several years to have on our board of directors Ambassador Johnny Young. Johnny had retired from a distinguished diplomatic career and was devoting himself to charitable and volunteer work in the DC area. We were so fortunate that he joined our organization, helping at concerts, hosting house concerts and artist receptions, and liaising with the embassies of our international visiting performers. I accompanied Johnny on visits to the embassies of Spain, Greece, Croatia, and Cuba, and I always marveled at the effortless elegance of his conversation and the tremendous respect with which he was received. When Johnny passed away in 2021, we joined a global community of those grieving his loss. We wanted to do something in his memory, and we decided it would be most appropriate to commission a composer to write a piece for guitar in his honor. Through my friend and colleague, tenor John Wesley Wright, we were introduced to Jasmine Barnes, a young composer from Baltimore with an impressive list of national recognition. At the same time, we reached out to guitarist Colin Davin, who has great experience premiering new music, and invited him to be part of this project. I'm thrilled that everything has come together, and to talk about this new piece, the upcoming premiere, and Johnny's love of music and service, I'm joined now by Johnny's wife, Angie Young, by composer Jasmine Barnes, and on Zoom by guitarist Colin Davin. Hello to you all.
Hello, how are you?
Hello.
I would like to be the moderator of what will hopefully just feel like a conversation. And so I welcome everyone to ask each other questions. This is really the first time we've all gathered to talk about this special project. And so I'm just so touched and honored that you're all here to talk about this. And if just to start, I would like to start with you, Angie. And so, Angie, you were born and grew up in Philadelphia.
That's correct.
And you will tell us about meeting Johnny. But the first post that you had together, you were in your very early 20s.
Yes.
And that was in Madagascar. And that began just a wonderful life of adventure for the two of you.
Right.
So for those who may not know, Angie and Johnny were overseas for 37 years together. And Johnny was the ambassador in many cases, but it was always a team. And I think that's just what's so beautiful and inspiring is to think of your partnership and teamwork. You yourself worked with the State Department, in the Office of Chief of Protocol.
That's correct.
And that just sounds wonderfully exciting as well. So your role was preparing and presenting the credentials of the incoming ambassadorial staff and ambassadors to the United States, to
The President of the United States.
the president.
Yes.
And we were just talking before that you have met many presidents from George H.W. Bush through to Barack Obama.
That's right.
How, and in no particular order, I just love to hear more about your travels together, your work together, and also maybe if we started sort of in the most recent, how did Johnny come to Marlowe, and what were his thoughts on music and what he shared with you in that regard?
Well, I think I have to start with the fact that as a young man, Johnny was introduced to music and the arts by his mentor. I mean, I think he was as young as 15 years of age when he had a job. Johnny was in Philadelphia, and it was this gentleman by the name of Sal Barinholtz. I have to mention Sal, because Sal was truly like a mentor, and I would go so far as to say as a surrogate father. And it was Sal who introduced Johnny to his love of music and the arts and subjects such as that. So when Johnny came home one day and said, "I'm on the board of Marlowe Guitar," I really wasn't surprised. Johnny had a love of all types of music, and especially classical. So when the children were growing up, especially on the weekends, you heard classical music, throughout our home. He loved it. He knew all the artists. He knew the compositions. So I just wasn't surprised. And not only that, he was very, very busy. So he got involved with so many different things. Yes.
Well, I remember several times we would go down to the embassies, and that always took us down 16th, and he would tell me sort of various landmarks, but, often it involved what he was working for, volunteering with, and it was putting new arrivals to the United States on the right path to citizenship, and all the sort of just wonderful service things.
Yes.
And so it was such a thrill to work with him, and as I say, a real honor. And there was always some humor to the work with the embassies, and he's just always a sparkle in his eye, and so I was just so grateful. And so, Jasmine, I want to also introduce you to our audience. It was a pleasure to meet you through John Wright. And John knew, because John, my colleague, had met Johnny, and he knew that we were looking for a composer to write a piece in Johnny's honor. And he called me and he said, "I've found your composer." And so my colleague John had been working with you on a project for the American Spiritual Ensemble and in Baltimore. And so we're just looking over your bio, you've written for so many ensembles, instrumentations, opera, everything. But this is going to be your first piece for guitar. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you came to the guitar and what that process was like?
Yeah, my goal with writing this piece was to, first of all, just write a piece that really breathed Johnny Young, Ambassador Johnny Young. And I just felt like I wanted it to be something that was memorable, something that had like a melody that you could remember. And I think because then every time you hear that melody, you'll think of Ambassador Johnny Young. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I thought that my difficulty with writing for a guitar was that I'm not a guitarist. And I think that's like a really big part of it. Not being a guitarist and then writing something for a guitar is like, well, what do guitarists like? What can you do? What can't you do? Mm-hmm. So I have to say special thanks to everyone from Marlowe Guitar International for like assisting me, and Colin.
Okay, you, like,
because I mean, there was I really had to like humble myself, and like, when you write for, or when you're used to writing for specific instruments or things, you kind of know what you want to do. And I was like, I feel like I don't know exactly what I want to do.
Interesting.
And that is humbling. And also, I think it's just a nice journey to like involve yourself into, like trying something that you have never done before. So yeah.
It's fun with guitar. I mean, and Colin, I'm going to turn this over to you to speak about this, but guitar is sort of this reputation of being a legendarily difficult instrument to write for the first time. And even, we sort of think about historically all the composers that come to guitar, they often do it later in their career. We're so excited that you're doing this early in your career, because that means we get more pieces from you. But yes, do you and Colin want to talk about the process of your collaboration? Because Colin, for those who maybe don't know, so Colin has played a lot of new music. He worked closely with his teacher, Sharon Isbin, who is really one of an American legend for bringing new music to life, and with different composers. So you have a long history with that. And I think you sort of knew when I said I'm introducing you to Jasmine, she hasn't written for guitar before. I think that's when we realized, yes, this is a famous problem. So do you want to talk a little bit about what it's like to work with a composer and get that ball rolling?
Yeah, absolutely. It's well, first of all, I just want to say, reiterate how happy I am to be a part of this project and how honored I am to play this beautiful music in tribute to Ambassador Johnny Young. And it's been a wonderful journey diving into Jasmine's music. And the process in, usually when you're working with a composer who's never written for the guitar, there might be some discussion in advance of, kind of the resources of the guitar and the challenges that come with it and the limitations. And there's no amount of preparation, though, that can really get a composer that comfortable with it. And even myself as a guitarist, I am not a composer, but I do arrange a lot of music for guitar or multiple guitars or guitar with other instruments. And I find it difficult to write for the guitar, and I'm supposed to know how the thing works. So it's a huge challenge always. And the process that happens from receiving a first draft through to the final draft is, I think, a really interesting one. And the spirit with which a composer approaches that process has a huge impact on the success of the project and how much fun I'm having or not having. And working with Jasmine was such a delight. And we had just such a very open dialogue and back and forth, talking about possibilities and challenges from that first draft that I saw. And I think maybe the folks at Marlowe had a little bit of interaction with the score before it got into my inbox. So there'd already been some process happening there. And I'm grateful to everyone who was a part of that process as well.
Big thanks to Candace Mowbray, who was our first first reviewer. So yeah, it was tremendous to have her input. And
very detailed.
Yes. And do you want to talk about so what is it that makes writing for the guitar so difficult? Like, we know we have 6 strings. Like, where's the problem?
Exactly. You have 6 strings.
Yeah, 6 strings. They're tuned funny, and we don't have enough fingers to play them with.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, I always find that, for example, when I'm arranging music, the choice between the idealized version of what I want that music to be and the practical reality of what the guitar can do, finding the balance between those is really the big challenge. And you can create something that's extremely idiomatic for the instrument, but might be lacking a lot of the detail and the kind of pure compositional artistry that you might be going for. Or you can write something that's extremely pure to the abstract vision and a nightmare to try and play on the instrument. And so that back and forth as you're trying to put something together is a huge challenge. And I've kind of seen the whole spectrum of things. I've seen composers who approach the guitar very carefully. They want to make sure everything is playable. And as such, sometimes the textures or the activity can be a little lacking. And I have to kind of encourage those composers, we could flush that out a little bit. And then the other side of the spectrum is, of course, the overly complicated or too dense or kind of awkward texture. Well, and certainly I think, Jasmine, what you wrote was, in the draft process, there were certainly edits. There were things we had to kind of work around or revoice a chord, switch an octave up, things like that happened. But nothing that I saw said to me, oh boy, we're not going to be able to make this work. So everything that came in, I could see where it was currently, and I could kind of imagine where it was going to end up once we kind of guitarified it a little more.
It always seems like the most interesting guitar pieces are written by non-guitarists, because I mean, there's some really beautiful guitar performer composers, and you talked about the idiomatic nature, but sometimes when you have a fresh perspective. And do you want to talk about your background, because you started as a singer, is that right? So and I thought that was so perfect, Angie, because we talked about what music does Johnny like, and it was sort of often some of it had sort of a vocal or a choral or a linear song like, and I just thought, so do you want to talk about your journey from singer to composer? So that's pretty special.
I started, it's so funny because I actually arrived to music just late in my life, just in general. Like when I was in high school, I went to high school for math, engineering, and science. So I was in the band there, but I didn't sing. And everything I really know came from me going to Morgan State University. Yeah.
Amazing.
So yeah, when I got there, I was like, I heard the choir and I was like, I want to sing. I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And my mom thought I was insane because I was switching my major from architecture to music without background in it. So it's like, what are you really doing? Joined the choir. Turns out I had a natural gift for singing opera. I was 19, and I, became a music major, and kind of the rest is history. Started getting casted in different opera roles, like almost immediately, which is probably not a good thing. But anyways, so it was cool.
Yes, you mentioned that it was a strain on your voice that you.
Yeah,
that's right.
I had a voice injury pretty early on because I was doing a lot really quickly. Like I was 19 and I'm singing Serena and Porgy and Bess, or singing Mariachi's Lead, and like these are things that are just not for a teen anything, like anything teen. So around 20 was when I had the voice injury, so I had to be quiet, and so I started writing, and I started writing for The Voice first because that was just what I was doing at the time, and I felt like writing for me was therapeutic because it was like the voices that I'm writing is like singing for me, Yeah. And I only had to be quiet for like a semester, but it was enough that I was like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? Dramatic. So, so after that I gave the pieces to my choir director, and he was like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, okay. So my first piece was premiered in Abu Dhabi, which is like, who does that? Well, how is that a thing? Right.
That's
so
amazing.
That's weird. Right. Like, okay, yeah.
How did
that's
that come
happened.
about?
Yeah.
So Morgan's choir like sings everywhere. Everywhere. I'm not
What
even
year was
joking.
this?
So that year was 2013. That was 2013 when my first piece was premiered, which is like, that sounds
This is 10
so,
years.
like not that long ago, but yes. But also, that's 10 years. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I didn't call myself a composer at the time though, so.
But that appears to me as if that one door closed and another door opened.
Yeah. Well, I was still singing though.
Yes.
That was funny because I was just dramatic about it. as I always am about everything. So, but yeah. So I feel really blessed to be able to compose full time now, because I would have never guessed that would be what I was doing even 10 years ago. I was like, oh, okay,
Right.
yeah, I'm gonna do this thing. That's pretty cool.
That's wonderful. That's just wonderful.
So yeah.
Well, and speaking of sort of music performances all over the world, so Colin, our audience might not know your background, which was after Juilliard, you went to Afghanistan and worked with students there. This was sort of in the early days after the war had ended, and when you and I were talking earlier, you had a beautiful phrase where you referred to this whole project for writing the piece to honor Ambassador Young was this intersection of music and diplomacy. And I just thought that was such a perfect phrase of yours. And do you want to talk a little more about what that means to you and also your experiences in Afghanistan?
Sure. My awareness of the importance of culture and art and music in particular to bring people together, and especially in the context of conflict, started when, sort of out of the blue, I was invited to be a guest teacher in Kabul in 2013. By a friend of mine from Juilliard, Avery Waite, who's a wonderful cellist and educator, and he was living there full time as a teacher at the Afghanistan National Institute of Music, and I was brought in for their Winter Music Academy, and then I came back 3 more times over the next couple of years for a few weeks at a time, every time, and the complete lack of understanding, I think, that Americans had about Afghans and that many Afghans had about Americans was just highlighted so dramatically when we had this vehicle of music to create that bridge, to create that sense of understanding. I remember there was an instance when after one of our guitar classes, there was a little extra time at the end of the day, and some of the high school age students were just asking me a lot of questions about my life and about the United States. And one of them said, "Is it true that you can't be Muslim in America?" And I had to imagine that was a widespread belief among those students, and probably among many other people in Afghanistan, which of course is officially a Muslim country, was then and is still now, albeit quite differently. And of course, that was when my little nationalistic pride, and I said, "No, you can be any religion you want." And I sort of became a bit defensive of my home country in that one instance. But it was through this vehicle of sure, I was there as a teacher, but I was also learning a lot from these students and from the Afghan teachers that were on the faculty there as well. That school had a divide of both Western classical and Indian and Afghan music. And I learned so much from all of them. And I think that being in that shared project of growing together as musicians just completely wiped out any of these artificial divisions that existed between us previously. So coming into this project felt really special to me, because I think I've had this feeling about the power of the arts as something that moves people together and moves people forward together. And so this opportunity just felt really wonderful in that sense, and really brought back a lot of important beliefs and understandings that I've developed through some of that work.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that's just a perfect analogy or a parallel with your life in the service and in the diplomatic world.
Exactly.
Do you want to talk about some of your experiences?
Oh my, yes, it was absolutely wonderful. There's so many adjectives that I could use to describe the time that we spent abroad in 11 overseas assignments. Wow. We had 11 overseas assignments, and beginning with Tananarive, Madagascar, Conakry, Guinea, Nairobi, Kenya, where our daughter was born. And then Johnny had the last 4 posts were as ambassador. So they were to Sierra Leone, Togo, Bahrain, and Slovenia. Wow. And it was absolutely an incredible career and an incredible life. I loved it, and so did Johnny. But we also enjoyed when we returned to our own country. We wanted to be able to enjoy our country. We wanted to be healthy enough to enjoy it, by moving around to learn more about our own country as well. Mm-hmm. But living abroad was truly something special, something I will treasure the rest of my life.
And you spoke about coming home for a time when your children were young, and
Yes.
the importance of sort of that. I thought of that when Colin was talking about how you represent your own country, but you have to have that time.
Without a doubt.
Here.
You have to have that basis, and we thought it was time. And we were home for 4 years from 1979 to 83. And it was long enough, I think, as I mentioned earlier, that the children got to know their grandparents. Both were still living. They got to know their relatives, and they basically were able to get to know friends in the U.S. And they loved it. They really loved it. We had a home that they talk about a lot, and they, we were able to put down roots, in other words. And Johnny and I thought it was very important to do so, and that's why we stayed home, for as long as we did.
Right.
Yes.
And then also the root is your togetherness. So,
without a doubt.
wherever you
doubt.
are is
Yes.
Yes,
wherever we are, we're family.
Yeah,
So that's so important. It was important to us. When the children went off to school, then it was just Johnny and I. And, they came to visit, and that was great too. But it was just a remarkable career. It truly was remarkable in many respects. The people that we met, what we learned abroad, the culture, the languages. I think it was sort of like a magical time. Really, it was. Yes.
I'm sort of curious about something. You're mentioning all these countries that you were on assignment to. How do those come about? Because it's a fascinating mix of places, and I'm sort of curious about how that came to be, and how did you find adapting to all those different kinds of
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I think both Johnny and I we were always worried about that. At the State Department, there is a procedure. I mean, you have to sort of go through their procedures for, a selection board as how the officers are sort of tapped to go to various places. So that's a process. But I must say, we threw ourselves into it. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Everywhere we were, we had 5 assignments in 5 different countries in Africa, 3 in the Middle East, 1 in the West Indies, and 2 in Europe.
Wow.
So it was a wonderful mixture. We didn't go to the Far East, but we did do that on a wonderful trip that we took, during the millennium. So we did do a great trip where we went to Hong Kong, Singapore, Bali, and Thailand. Just remarkable, truly remarkable.
So I want to know, did y'all ever spend time learning other languages?
Oh, we did,
Okay.
yes. In fact, the entire family, we speak French. I always say that I speak kitchen French. and our friends laugh at me because the French will say, French is not the language of the kitchen, but of the salon.
Oh my goodness.
But Johnny's French was excellent. It was well enough too that he carried on business when we were in Togo in French. Yes.
Wow.
So yeah, that was very, very special. And then we spoke bits and pieces of Arabic. So
That's cool.
yeah,
That is cool. That's impressive.
Languages, it is. Well, languages are an integral part, I think, of traveling, and people enjoy when you're able to say a few words in their language, without a
It
doubt.
goes right to the heart.
I probably knew 10 words, but in many countries that I went to, I would throw those words out, and they all thought I spoke the language.
I love that.
Appreciation of the effort. And,
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Jasmine, you asked beforehand, you asked Angie how she and Johnny met.
Yes, I want to know. How did y'all meet?
It's a story that Johnny loved telling. He loved because, he had his version and I had mine. But we actually met at a Nigerian National Day, at their Independence Day celebration. And it was held at the International House in Philadelphia. That's where I was born and raised, in Philadelphia. And I went chaperoned by 2 neighbors, two friends. And my mother thought an awful lot of these 2 young women, that she said, well, she can attend this dance as long as you all are chaperoning. And I say that because I was only 15 years of age. And that was the night I met Johnny. And I was in high school. And so we didn't see each other until I did invite him to my graduation. And then we married 60 years later. So it was sort of meant to be, I think. Yes.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, it was. It really was.
So you were saying that when you were married, you were 21, and within a few days, or within a month of that, was
We went
your
abroad,
first,
yes.
your first post.
20 days later, we were on the SS United States. We went to France. And so you can say we had our honeymoon on the SS United States. It was like Hollywood. It truly was like Hollywood. And especially when we received an invitation to sit at the table of the captain.
Oh my
goodness.
So that was really wonderful. And then we went to France. We were right in Paris for almost a week, and Johnny had some training there, and so that's why we were in Paris. And then we went to our first post to Tananarive, Madagascar.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
Amazing.
really exotic and very exciting. Johnny said that when he was told, when he received the call from the State Department that he was assigned to Madagascar, he said, "Oh, is that upstate New York? And they said, no, Mr. Young. He said, it's a wonder that I didn't lose the job right then.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, upstate, cool.
Yes.
From there, the world. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, we are just so thrilled that this has, as I said, has come together. And Colin, you're the only person who has heard the piece so far, but everybody will hear it on Saturday, and we just can't wait to share it with everyone, and have Jasmine in the house, and it's just going to be quite a thrill for us. As far as I know, we've never the Marlowe series. This is our first. We've never done this before, so it's really, as I said, it just felt like. And the right thing to do. Yes. And what we love about compositions, and as musicians ourselves, we always look at the title of pieces and who they were written for, and you can look back well into history and think, oh, I want to know who that dedicatee was. Yes. And so I think it's in your hands. We are in a good position, and then from your performance, I'm sure many, many more will want to play this amazing piece. So, well, thank you all. Thank you all for being here and spending your time.
But if I may, I'd just love to sort of first say thank you to Jasmine.
Thank you.
What you have done for us with composing this piece is a legacy that will live on and on. Mm-hmm. And is something that is beyond my comprehension almost. Mm-hmm. I'm just so grateful to you. I really am. And I just wish you all the luck in your future. Mm-hmm. And then I look at Colin, who I know brilliantly will play this piece and will give us so much joy. I cannot thank the two of you enough until I thank Marlowe Guitar for bringing you together and basically giving our family this wonderful gift, truly a gift. And in thanking Marlowe Guitar, the two people that I think especially would be Danielle Cummings and Joe Figueroa. These two are truly their aces, without a doubt. And then I think that I want to thank Johnny, because Johnny indeed was the love of my life. And that love has been a gift that keeps on giving. And I'm truly grateful for that. I'm truly grateful for that. And I just have this little few words that was written by a colleague of ours and a very dear friend. We served together in Togo, and he wrote a piece for Johnny in the State Department Journal. And it's just a few words that sort of expresses the kind of person Johnny was, and I think what people think of him. And I just have to read it. I don't have my glasses on, but I think I can see it. He said, indeed, for those who knew Johnny, we remember him first, not for his exceptional career accomplishments. We recall his humanity, his dignity, his love for people in all nations and all backgrounds, and the lasting impression he made on everyone. Thank you all.
Indeed.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.